24th meeting of the Admin and Public Works Committee. Want to welcome several members of the public here that are here to join us tonight. So we'll begin with the roll call.
Chair Garitano,
Yes, here.
Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Eden. Absent. Councilmember Nian. Here. Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon. Here. Councilmember Jaxie.
Here.
Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
All right. That's everyone.
Councilmember Edens is also online.
She is on Zoom right now. Okay, great.
Yeah, just
there she is.
let's get her to acknowledge her presence. Can you hit that, by the way, that button that says got it so we can see?
Yes, I was just waiting to be let in as a panelist. So I apologize for not being present in person. I'm having a little bit of migraine RS, so I might have to turn off the lights that are above me. So if I cut my camera, I'm still listening. I'm just having some vision trouble tonight.
Hey, thank you, and hope you feel better. All right, so we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for the October 10th meeting. If there's anyone that'd like to make a motion for approval of the minutes, now will be the time. Councilmember
I
McCutcheon.
have a change to the minutes.
Okay, so are you making a motion to approve with the change? Or
Yes.
Okay,
I,
let's get a second and we'll let you go ahead. What change would you like to make?
my last name was misspelled.
Oh, okay.
There's no O in it. Okay, so the record is.
That is correct. So Michelle, please make note of that, just a spelling correction there. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on the minutes? All right, so all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
I,
Okay. Minutes are approved. So we'll move into public participation. We have several members here in the room that we'll open up for public participation. I don't see any attendees remotely. Right now, their number is showing as 0. So if you'd like to speak during public participation, please make sure, if you haven't done so already, to fill out a comment card just so that we can include that information in the minutes. The same rules apply for speaking in our council meetings. So keep it to 5 minutes and
There.
you know, and you can fill the card after you speak. So if you want to speak first, we'll do that. And so I'll open it up now. Do you have any cards?
Yes, I have 3 right now. We'll start with James Van Ness.
Okay, and yeah, you can speak right from there and you know,
Okay.
welcome to the committee meeting.
I'm Jim Van Ness, 17133 Windsor Crest Boulevard, Ward 1. I'm here to speak about private alleys. On the later agenda tonight, you are being asked to rule on the manners of the meadows of Cherry Hills alleys and for acceptance and to send a recommendation to the city attorney to do the paperwork. Being in Windsor Crest in the same situation, we would like to have you and do the same action tonight for our alleys. And the reason I have my background for why I think we should, in the September 5th meeting, it came before the Planning and Zoning Commission, a recommendation from the Planning Department, Mr. Woolridge. And they voted 9-0 to approve. From that, and also that night, Commissioner Grubus brought up the questioning during the questions about the condition of the Windsor Crest alleys. Mr. Voonich answered by saying, with the repairs that have been done, the alleys are acceptable for the city to be accepted. Then there was Commissioner Depler, who was remote and said she couldn't hear the question. So they brought it up again, and he explained the same thing again, that the alleys are acceptable for the city. Which is at 1 hour and 48 minutes on the video, if you want to see him say all that. From that, it went to the city council on September 11th in work session for accepted file, and the city council accepted that. Okay, now I want to note that our alleys are already being snowplowed by the city, and we response to the fact that we cut all the 109 city-owned property, and the city's making $5,000 or $6,000 a year advantage over us, but we're working as a team. So all we're asking for is the alleys, not snowplowing. The other thing, there's been some comment about a recorded plat not agreeing with our indentures. I don't know if you people are aware of it, but in October 5th, 2010, we went through the St. Louis County Court in a lawsuit where the judge ruled that our indentures are the governing body for our subdivision. They are legal and they are the sole governing body for the subdivision. So we've contacted an attorney to represent us, who represented us in that case, and he said that other plat is meaningless. So we don't think that should apply. So we've been accepted by the city council, we've been accepted by planning and zoning, we've been accepted by this town center update committee. And quite honestly, we'd like to be done. So I would like you to make the same recommendation on our alleys tonight that you would be making on the manners of Cherry Hills. And we appreciate any help we can get. And if you have any questions, I have been the president for 15 years, so I was up on the witness stand of the lawsuit. The lawsuit was on over a fence, and the couple that had a fence that was illegal said that it doesn't matter because the indentures don't matter. And the judge first ruled that the indentures are the sole governing body for the subdivision, which then they made them tear down the fence and put up a new one. But we have precedent on our indentures being the sole governing body. So we'd just be happy to be done.
Thank you very much. Do we have another speaker card?
Yes, we do. Teresa Pearson.
Hello, my name is Teresa Pearson. I live at 16696 Cherry Hollow Court, Ward 8. I am one of the trustees of the HOA of that subdivision, and I'm here asking for your support in the city acceptance of our 2 alleys. We have 2 small alleys which total less than 800 feet. That 800 feet of alleys is costing our subdivision 36% of our budget. That's a lot of money for 2 small alleys. Whereas if the city were to take over the maintenance and the electricity for the alleys, it wouldn't be as much because of course they're out there anyway plowing and maintaining Cherry Hollow Court and Cherry Hills Meadows Drive. So it wouldn't take that much more for the city to take over our alleys. I'd like to point out what Mr. Vunich has already been on record saying, that it's only fair that the city take over our alleys because the city has used our alleys when they were building the bridge to the enclaves of, the bridge over to the enclaves. They were using our alleys as access to build the bridge. And of course, they're using it for maintenance of that bridge. So I'm just here asking for your support tonight. It's been a long fight, as Windsor Crest is well aware of too. And we would be happy to have it finished. So any help that you can give us would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yes, we have Jim Bennett. Oh, no. There's. Yes.
Very close.
There's- Your doppelganger.
So my name's Jim Vanek. I represent a group called Citizens for a Safer Old State. We're on Facebook and we have 305 members now. People of the local community that are interested in improving the safety on Old State, which has been kind of has been overlooked for decades. Got a package in front of you that I'd like you to refer to, and this is kind of one of those overhead questions, and I know you don't know the answer to this question, but does anybody know who this lady is I'm holding this picture of? Her name's Linda Giroux, and I know that name probably doesn't mean anything to you, but she died 6 years ago on one of the lower corners of lower curves on Old State, tragically. And since then, 6 years later, not one thing has been done on Old State to improve the safety for the motorists who drive on that road. And I'll have to remind you that that is the 3rd busiest road in Wildwood, and compared to Missouri 100, Missouri 109, you'll obviously see there's a drastic difference in what has been spent to improve those roads and what there has been nothing done for motorists who drive on Old State. So anyway, continuing, we're looking for 2 resolutions tonight from this body here. Hopefully it's unanimous. One of them's regarding a resolution to encourage the county to limit the size of truck going up and down the lower portion of Old State. And you'll see on the first page here, it's one of these car carriers, semi Teslas that are coming up Old State. Now, if they're coming from the Reform, trying to get up to Valley. If they want to do that, that's fine. They should get on the 141. They should get on 109. They should not be coming up Old State because it's obvious that road is not designed for that kind of a vehicle. And endangers, there's no way that truck, that trailer gets around those curves without going way over the center line of that road. So that was my first posting to my group in January, asking that the city and the county get together and work together on getting this restriction placed for lower Old State. I sent a letter to Joe Colessa. He responds saying that well, you can read it yourself, but that there haven't been enough accidents on that road to warrant a sign such as that. Now, I was a pilot. Somebody told me my engine was on fire. I guess I could tell them, well, we haven't crashed yet. I think everything's okay. You know, that's the same logic that's being used by Joe Colessa. You know, yeah, we realize that a truck shouldn't probably be on that road, but hasn't been an accident yet. It shows the disregard for safety by the county for our community. And it's just, so I would go to the third page here. Here's what results because of inaction by local and county government. And it's the intersection of Old State and Manchester. And I came upon this accident and took these pictures. Now, you'll see behind this tractor trailer, there's a white Toyota. There's a white Toyota behind there. Now, if that lady had been 4 or 5 feet further up, instead of getting her front end smashed, it would have probably, the truck probably would have taken off, or the trailer, not the truck, but the trailer would have taken off the top of her car and probably decapitated her. And this is why it's so important what happens here in this committee, because your response, your support, your lack of support has real world consequences. And so I ask you, that's one resolution. The other resolution is for a crosswalk at the community just south of Fairhaven. It's called, keep forgetting the name.
Country Ridge Estates.
Country Ridge Estates, and it's Lake Country Lane is the road. And they're very passionate about getting a crosswalk to the new multi-use path on the other side of the road, which will be done hopefully next year. So we completely support our position. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other speaker card?
Yeah, we have Barry, is it Hayes?
Hayes, that's right.
He's next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barry Hayes, and sorry for the mask. And it's really hard to hear folks and see folks with a mask on, but I'm past my 5 days of isolation and I'm now in my 5 days of masking. So I'm trying to adhere to my responsibilities to my fellow man. So I'm here on behalf of our subdivisions that are both at the intersection of Old State Road and Lake Country Lane. Our subdivision has no access currently to the amenities of the city, sidewalks of the city, crosswalks of the city, And there is no way for any of our children or our families to get to our community. And all of the things that we've supported in the city's master plan, which we support wholeheartedly. The expansion of the Old State Road and the improvements to Old State Road that were intended to provide that kind of access to our community and link our communities was originally designed in such a way as to put all of those improvements on the other side of Old State Road, such that at what is a very dangerous intersection where you come out, if you're in the subdivision and you look to the left and you can't see around a line of trees, a tree line that obstructs your view, and the road falls down precipitously towards Cherry Hills. You look to the right, and again, as Tim described, these are very narrow sections of Old State Road. There are no shoulders. There's nowhere for a pedestrian or a biker to safely navigate traffic or avoid traffic. And there's another curve that quickly approaches Old State or Lake Country Lane. At that intersection, it's critical both that we have access, our communities have access, and it's a very simple engineering adjustment to make a crosswalk there. The crosswalk is simply a process whereby signage, electrical signage, like what has been put in place farther north on Old State Road and has been very successful in helping pedestrians cross Old State, would now allow those of us who are at the southern end of this upper stretch of Old State to also have access. And it's the only way for us to have, in our families, to have safe access to what are now going to be the sidewalks and the walking path on the other side of the road. The other thing that this does, which is essential for us as long as we have the conditions that we have on this stretch, and it's Jim does a great job of pointing out what are these very dangerous sections of lower Old State. Upper Old State isn't better, except for the fact that it doesn't have these 20+ degree changes in grade. But what it does have are these same conditions where there are sharp turns, there are no shoulders. We've in fact had to go out and cut trees. Our law enforcement have been there on Old State when trees have come down, obstructed the road. They're attempting to get access to the road. We've come out with saws. And it's been, the officers have all been very nice and grateful, even issued us letters of commendation. Thank you, because if it weren't for you, our officers are out there in an unsafe portion of the road approaching dusk. And those are the most dangerous conditions for them when they're out on the roads attempting to address emergencies like this. It's the same for our kids, who are even less wary and less capable of navigating fast traffic. But the practical effect of adding the crosswalk to the current engineering design is that it adds one more point of slowage, of caution. So that, now if we have what is the current design, one crosswalk up at the northern section, there's another one planned somewhere in between. And now we have one at that southern section of the upper stretch. We now have interspersed several areas that have signage that give caution to drivers, slow down because there are pedestrians, and help us prevent what is inevitably a tragic accident involving children, involving anyone. And again, it's about fair access to the community and our amenities, to sidewalks and other things, but it's also about us implementing something that will create a safety, a natural safety impact on what is currently an inherently dangerous road. We can't completely remake the road, but we can do little things like this that help make it more safely navigable for both drivers and for pedestrians. Thank you.
Do you have any other speaker cards?
That was it.
All right, thank you, and I don't see any attendees online that we can ask, so we'll keep moving forward. Now, we heard two topics come up during public participation. So I'll ask the committee if it's okay, we can take just a quick vote to rearrange the agenda so that we can cover those two topics now, rather than keep our guests here waiting around the information of the agenda. So the first item we heard was regarding the public dedication of private alleys and manners at the Meadows at Cherry Hills. So I'd like to suggest we cover that item next. And then the second item I would like to suggest is that we cover the, it is under, there's one under for information, Old State Road for Public Works. But there's also a proposed city consultant agreement for Old State Road path easement acquisition services. So I think it would be logical if we can cover these related items. Let me ask if there's any question or comment on that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think probably best under the miscellaneous feature, or the miscellaneous section probably. Just because either one, the Old State contract is really not really fairly related, but.
Okay, well, since we're talking about Old State, maybe we'll cover them together. So with that, then, those items that I mentioned here, if there's a motion to rearrange the order of the agenda, so we cover these next, and then we'll resume the remainder of the agenda. Is there someone like to make that motion? Council member Hutchins, you have a question?
No, I was gonna motion that we reorder the agenda with the addition of, during council meetings, we can respond to participants' questions. But while mine is not a direct question to the participant, it is a question to Mr. Vunich and Mr. Brown regarding the comment. So I don't know if you want me to hold that until miscellaneous or.
If you don't mind, yeah, hold it till, well, if it's related to either the alleys or Old State Road, just bring it up when we talk about it.
Okay, well, it's the alleys, but it's a different subdivision.
Okay, so.
Miscellaneous.
So I think that because we're talking about the alleys, maybe ask Director Vunich when we get to the alley portion
Okay, thank you.
of the conversation, and then we'll see. I mean, the action we'll have to take pertains to what the agenda posts,
Correct.
but
But
we
I'd
can
like
talk
additional
about that.
information.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, so with that then, the motion to rearrange the order of the agenda made by Councilmember McCutcheon, is that okay?
Yes.
And then Councilmember Nye, a second. All those in favor of changing the order of the agenda, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone oppose or abstain? All right, hearing none, then we'll change the order of the agenda. So the next item we're going to cover is related to what you see under Public Works for action number 7, public dedication of private alleys and the manners at the Meadows of Cherry Hills.
I'm sorry. Here, where are we?
It is under Public Works for action.
It's on what? 5B7.
5B7 is the item.
So I will now hand it off to
Yeah, I will take this and unless Thomas has something he wants to add to it. This is pertaining, as we've discussed already, with the alleys in the manners of the Meadows at Cherry Hills. As this committee is very aware, at the June meeting of the City Council, we adopted an amended policy that addressed the addition of alleys to an existing policy pertaining to the public dedication of private streets. This was discussed and debated earlier in the spring and finally adopted in June. So subsequent to that action, we have received a request from trustees with the manners of the Meadows of Cherry Hills. They have provided a petition the city's consideration, with the department's consideration to take over the alleys, the 2 alleys that were referenced in the subdivision. In accordance with the policy, we did do an inspection of the 2 alleys, and the 2 streets are in pretty good condition. They were more recently accepted, the whole subdivision was more recently accepted by the department back in 2019. So based on the inspection, we didn't take any exceptions or have any recommended corrections that needed to be made to bring the alleys up to our current standards. I would note that and Mr. Vunich is with us, but there is another approval that would be necessary through the Department of Planning that I didn't reference directly in my memo. But I know that Joe has raised concerns relative to changing the subdivision ordinance to allow this to occur. So effectively, there's still a couple approvals at City Council that have to occur with regard to this one. But at least this approval, if granted, would move it to the next level to City Council at their November meeting. So with that, I think I will wrap up. I will say this will include the streetlights. There are some streetlights in the alleys. Now there are 9 parking spaces that are off the alley that, from the department's perspective, are not included in the approval. So those would still remain essentially under the control of the HOA. So they would regulate the use of those spaces. If they were to be transferred, they would be public spaces. And the city would have jurisdiction over their use. So at the moment, our position is they would not be included in the transfer. To be clear on that. So with that, I'll wrap. If there's any questions in particular, I'll be glad to answer them. I know Joe is with us. If you want to ask any questions of Joe relative to this request this time, thank you.
So maybe what I'll ask of Joe is on there, because it sounds like there's an additional step that needs to take place to update the, is it the site development plan?
I believe it's the site-specific ordinance pertaining
Site-specific
To the-
ordinance, so
to
I
the
guess-
subdivision.
the question is for Joe is then what else, how is that going to be accomplished? Is that something within our purview? Or do we have to have another committee or handle it? How would you accomplish that?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, with the direction from the Department of Public Works, specifically Rick Brown, the Department of Planning prepared for this particular item 2 things. The report that you received from the Planning and Zoning Commission recommending acceptance, but also the Department of Planning prepared for commission action, a change to that site-specific ordinance, which identified the alleys as private. It's a simple change, and it actually was presented to City Council at its last meeting and will be up for final approval at the November 13th meeting of the body. Thank you.
That takes care of that portion of is happening in parallel with this, that they would hopefully all come together and that would complete the approval process for this to take place. So let me open up to see what questions everyone has.
Yeah, I was a little confused reading the information. So are the rest of the streets in the subdivision, are they private or public?
No, the remainder of the streets are already city streets. It was just the alleys that were private for the original plan. So with the change in the policy, we're going to consider taking the alleys over as well.
And why wouldn't public parking spaces be taken over by the city as well? If it's on, is it on site, off site?
They are spaces that are adjacent to the alleys. They could be considered, I suppose, with the transfer. I didn't consider them to be part and parcel of the alleys. I suppose that's debatable, council member. But again, I would suggest that if they are transferred to the city, they'll become public parking spaces. Right now, essentially, the HOA controls their usage. So their concerns, the HOA would be able to weigh in on the disposition of those spaces. If they're transferred to the city, they'd be public spaces open to the public.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
We have to end up, Councilmember Edens.
Yep, just piggybacking off the last question by Councilmember McCutcheon. Are we in any way plowing those spots? Who does the maintenance? Who treats them with salt and who plows them? If we adopt the alley?
Well, Councilmember Edens, the department would handle the snow removal for the alleys. The spaces would be left to the HOA to address.
Okay, I mean, My only concern is if we were using tax dollars to plow those spots, but those spots were not public spots. I don't have a problem with adopting the alleyway, but if they're responsible for the maintenance of them, and it functions like, in my mind, almost as an extension of common ground, I'm okay with that.
Any other questions or comments regarding this? So we do have a recommendation by the department related to this here. Oh, Mr. Director Vunich.
Just to clarify my last statement and not to confuse the situation, the matter will be at public hearing on November 13th, and the bill will be prepared for introduction. It could be passed that night if the city council supports 2 readings or bumped to December. Thank you, and sorry for the confusion.
Thank you for that. So as is posted right now, this item specifically on the agenda states that it is the dedication of the private alleys and the manners of the Meadows of Cherry Hills. So our action, Corner Roberts, will be focused on this. I know there's public comment. I still think we want to have that conversation about it. But in order to make sure that we're staying aligned with the agenda and how the rules work, the motion has to be related to what's posted. So I'll open it up to see if there's a motion related to that, but I still want to have that conversation based on what we heard tonight related to the other subdivision. Is there anyone that's willing to make a motion for based on the department's recommendation for the public dedication of the 2 private alleys at the Manors at the Meadows of Cherry Hills?
Farmer has his hand up.
Oh, Councilmember Farmer, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
And then a second. All right, Councilmember McCutcheon. So any other discussion on that motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? All right, that motion passes. So we did hear regarding the Windsor Crest subdivision. There was public comment here tonight, and I do think we obviously moved this up related to their comment as well. Just to get a better understanding of it, I would like to ask, because I know that there is a desire and the intent of the Town Center Update team was that we would take on the alleys, which has led to where we are today. But I believe, would it be the city administrator? Do you want to provide an update? I think there's something regarding a legality or legal technicality, but then I think there's another aspect of it that right now is.
Yes, so thank you, Councilman, Chair Garritano. There are 2 components here. Are we speaking on the Windsor Crest alleys at this time, Chair Garritano?
Just to
Okay.
understand that, yeah.
Yeah, to provide some context, the city attorney has reviewed the overall request, and the original plat that was established to establish the subdivision does not have specific language that dedicates that land to the HOA, so the alleys themselves to the HOA. So if the city were to accept the alleys as is with the language not clarified, there could be legal ramifications in the future stating that, hey, the city does not actually own them and they're doing all this work for them without actually owning them because the official documentation didn't give the HOA the authority to dedicate the alleys to the city. The original plat does not state that the HOA has the ownership. It states that all occupants and future occupants have ownership of the alleys, which makes it a little bit more confusing. At this time, the city attorney is working with their attorney to try to get clarification on that language. And once that's done, that'll be a big step in the right direction. More than happy to answer any questions on that. And Mr. Young, I know he's not here tonight, but he would be more than happy to explain further as well. The other item of discussion is that in that most recent update to our policy, our public dedication of alleys and streets policy, it states that an inspection is to be conducted before acceptance of the street. That inspection is done by the Director of Public Works, but the Public Works Department, and items are noted on what needs to be brought up to snuff pretty much brought up to city code, our standards, and then we take it over once it's brought up to that standard. At this time, the Windsor Crest alleys are a little bit in rough shape. There are some items that could be improved before we would, if we were following the policy, before we'd want to take them over. In comparison, the alleys that we're discussing here tonight, over at the Manors, those are in a lot better shape and don't need as much improvements. So that's the main issue, the two main issues here. Once the legal conceptual issue is clarified, I do think that we can move pretty quickly on this, but there is a point of contention with regard to the improvement of the alleys, because at this time, and Director Brown could speak further on this, I would believe that we would have to probably resurface that alley within the next year or so after accepting the alley. And I could see very quickly after accepting that alley, a resident would know that the city owns it at that point. They would be giving us calls pretty quickly stating that we need to do just that. Thank you.
So I think one part that we heard is that there's legal side of it. It sounds like they're having conversations, or if not, there should be, based on what I'm hearing here, regarding that, trying to get that resolved here. And I'm not a lawyer, and I don't think anyone else is here to dispute that. But I think the other part then is the acceptance of the road and the condition, and certainly appreciate the city administrator's concern that the city would take over the road and then someone could complain based on the condition there. But I wonder if that's, maybe that's some kind of schedule that can be arranged as part of the acceptance that says that the city, may not be able to do those improvements immediately, but it might be something that needs to be budgeted over a couple of years, maybe address those more serious issues like that. So just thinking of how we can try to move this forward here to honor the intent of the town center update team's recommendation that the city take over the alleys. But I want to open it up to see if there's any thoughts or ideas, because I know we've had some acceptances in Ward 5, and I know we've done some work even after we've accepted those roads. So Councilman McCutcheon.
Yeah, but in those instances, the HOA contributed greatly to upgrading those streets before the city took them over. But I don't know that we still answered our constituents' question, because planning and zoning passed their request, council passed their request. So can somebody please explain to me why the council and planning and zoning could approve their request, but now we have a legal issue? Did that get missed? What, is it a misunderstanding? Can you please explain?
Yes, at this time, I can speak on that, and Director Brown, Director Boonish can also speak if they'd like, but the main concept here, and this is really the main issue, more than just maybe following the policy that was passed by council, is the legal issue. So even though council did approve it and the Planning and Zoning Commission did approve it, in this case specifically, the HOA does not have the legal authority per the information provided to the city as of right now to dedicate those streets. So even with approval from the city, the elected body, the city cannot legally take ownership of something if the individual granting ownership does not have the authority to grant said ownership. That's the main concern and the main hurdle right now. The city attorney has brought that to our attention, and we are working with their attorney right now just to try to clarify and see where their miscommunication might have been, because the original plat that established that subdivision duly states that it's all occupants and future occupants, not the HOA. So we're trying to get clarification language there, and once that's done, then we can have a completely different discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion that anyone wants to bring up related to that?
President, I'm confident that from talking with Attorney Young prior to the meeting, that he is on top of it. he will be talking with the other attorney and getting this straightened out.
So then that takes care of that part there, but I think the other part that we need to get straight is like this issue then of what is considered acceptable, how the city could accept it, and any ideas that maybe Department of Public Works might have.
Chair, we're following policy that was passed by the council and this committee, and that is our goal, is to follow it and not sway from that policy. As I'm sure you're familiar with, that it does include an inspection and a report to be provided that lists the deficiencies that the department has identified that require correction before the street is accepted or the alley is accepted. So that information will be forthcoming to the committee and the council. But the legal issue is, I think, first and foremost, because if the HOA doesn't have the authority to transfer it, we can't accept it because there's nothing to accept.
All right, that, oh, you answered the question I was gonna ask, which is, you know, what is that report that shows about the acceptance? And then I think the council may intervene and decide whether they want to, you know, move forward with it or not. But I think you're right, the legal piece is the most important part first, because without that, you can't move forward. All right, Director Vunich, you got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And very briefly, just to kind of pull the thread on this particular item. The city council meeting on September 11th, the report from the Planning and Zoning Commission on the acceptance of the alleys in Windsor Crest was a receipt and filing. And both the department's report and the Planning and Zoning Commission's letter to city council identified compliance to the policy was a condition of that approval. Thank you.
All right, anything else anyone has? So we'll continue with this. We'll be looking for an update on that report and then an update on the discussions that the city attorney and the attorney for Windsor Crest have. So let's keep that on the agenda for our next meeting here to keep this. Then that moves us to the next item on the agenda. And actually, we have two items if we moved up based on comment tonight. So under Public Works for information, there's one just a general Old State Road update. There is also another item pertaining to Old State Road, which is the proposed city consultant agreement for the Old State Road Path Easement Acquisition Services. So let's start with the update on where we are with Old State regarding you know, concerns that have been brought up and discussions taking place with the county as far as the county fulfilling its obligation to work on that road.
Would you like me to take that?
Yeah.
Chair Thomas?
Yeah,
So
I'll defer to you, Mr. Brown.
Okay, I'll say a couple things and Thomas may want to weigh in if that's okay.
Yep.
I tried to provide briefly the memo that I prepared for the city council. I know there's a lot of discussion, a lot of ideas being thrown out relative to Old State Road. So I wanted to kind of provide that information back to you. Let me address a couple things that were raised, maybe that will hopefully help shed some light on the situation. The crosswalk, and Dan could speak to this as well. The crosswalk issue that's been requested has been a point of discussion with St. Louis County. We've requested it, their consideration of the crosswalk a couple times now. So far, we've been unsuccessful in getting a favorable response from them. Just last week, I sent another email to Joe Colessa and I've asked him to respond more formally. So hopefully we can get at least a written response from them. To put them on the record in terms of why they don't want to grant the crosswalk. But I would say crosswalks can be a very difficult topic because they have to be placed where they're safe, frankly, and that's everyone's goal, is a safe crosswalk. So you don't want to put a crosswalk where it's not safe. So that always enters into it as an evaluation of, is it really safe to encourage people to cross at a given location before you stripe it? So I don't know exactly where they weighed in on the crosswalk installation, so I'll wait for me to get more details from them on it. I would say that with the path, we have it designed so there would be an access point available to a resident to cross the street. They will be able to access the trail directly opposite that road. So I think that would be an option. The question really at that point, the next point is there going to be a crosswalk or some additional traffic control at that location? So it will be accessible. It's just a question yet whether there'd be a formal crosswalk striped or traffic control provided. So hopefully there'd be more coming from Joe Colessa at St. Louis County relative to that issue. The other thing I wanted to brush on, if it's okay, is I know there's been a lot of discussion about making safety improvements to Old State, more recently, the southern section of Old State. And I wanted to mention this to you because I know it's been brought up, but I wanted to reaffirm it with you. So the county does have a design build project, a safety design build project that they are in process of finalizing the details of. That is a joint project with MoDOT. There's $3 million set aside for county roadways, and the lower section of Old State is eligible for those funds. That project is a design build project, and the county is evaluating, I think, 3 design build teams, and they're going to select one here in the next few months. So the point being that there still is a decision to be made there, whether or not Old State Road could be addressed under that project, but we should know more. Mr. Anick, if you know anything different, we should know more by about January in terms of which team is chosen and whether or not they plan to address Old State Road with that improvement project. So those are the 2 things I wanted to brush on, touch base on. I guess at this point, Thomas, do you have anything, or Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. At this time, I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. Brown was just stating there, was that we will know more probably by January of 2024, whether or not Old State is going to be included there. That being said, from the discussions we've had with the county, it doesn't seem like there's much appetite other than with this project that MoDOT is partnering with them on. So it might be something where, additional pressure just needs to be kept being put onto the county, because it does not seem like the data is not there, or there's just not enough of an appetite for them to really tackle Old State Road. So I think the pressure needs to be kept on it, but at this time, there has been no real advances from the county to move forward with those improvements that we've discussed here at committee and at council. Thank you.
I think that segues nicely into a request that we heard, because a resolution is an expression of opinion or sentiment of the council. And we've done that before, with other cities. And I think it's probably good in that theme that if we want to keep the pressure, which unfortunately we have to, because we feel that we're not getting the attention on Old State Road, then I think a resolution would be appropriate. It would send a clear message to the county to say, look, take this serious. We have residents that are not happy about the safety or lack of safety on that road. And, we need this to get on the radar. There are a lot of things that get on the radar of the county, and this one apparently just never seems to make it. So it's not something that we can vote on tonight. We can put it on the next meeting agenda that, the committee would approve a resolution to express that. And I think we heard several things here tonight. We have the old crosswalk path. We want to make sure that that's something that they're looking at. There was the issue of trucks. That's something that we've heard before. It's nothing new. The county has responded to that. It's included in Rick's memorandum, but we can certainly re-emphasize that because, people have mentioned to us about those trucks, especially in that southern portion of the road, as they make their way up. We've had a history of trucks that would try to go on Old State, and they would, for some reason, they would bear right when you get to the Old State Spur Road, which goes into the Enclaves neighborhood. As a matter of fact, the city rebuilt that little mini roundabout there because there were so many trucks that were going the wrong way there and making a U-turn in that roundabout and tearing up our roundabout. So there is a history there, of trucks going there. I think, we could have a resolution that we could vote on at the next meeting, and then ultimately goes to council that would hopefully send a message, making maybe louder than what we've been doing so far. And I think it's great. And I thank those residents there on State Road who've been advocates. We need that advocacy because, as you've heard, the county, at the end of the day, it's their road. But we can try to put that pressure as much as we can. So, Councilmember Hopper, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I actually had, I guess a couple quick questions, and I guess you addressed one of them was, what the process is for us to get that resolution drafted and have it on the agenda so we could vote on that. So whatever we need to do, I would say from our end, I'm happy if we need to, make a motion to draft the resolution or whatever it is, I'm happy to make that motion. But the other, I guess, question I have is, definitely in consideration of the fact that the county's doing their safety study and the design and build thing, I would say that if I was gonna put money down on it, I would put a very low odds that of all the county, they're gonna choose to build or design anything for Old State. They're gonna focus that on other areas. So, but in consideration of the fact that there is a chance they could do that, what of these, I guess, of the potential fixes, I know we've reviewed quite a few of them. What I guess this question would be for Mr. Brown. What can we do in the meantime without necessarily doing double work beyond the county, but can we do anything along the way here to kind of prep some of these things, whether it's, engaging with the consultant ourselves to say, this is, sort of our response to if we wanted to do the diamond grinding, I think tends to be the recommendation now for increasing friction on road surfaces or, guardrails, whatever it is we have to do, but just, kind of investigating these different aspects and seeing which ones are, feasible and which ones are going to really be unrealistic from that standpoint. So, sorry, it was kind of two questions. So I guess the first one is, and what do we need to do the resolution? And the second is, what work can we continue to do in the process of, holding off until the county gets more information, just so we're not sitting here stalled for them to come back and say, no, we're not doing anything with Old State again.
Well, I can speak, Mr. Brown, I'll let you speak to the item about what we can do from your public safety perspective. But when it comes to the process, this being discussed here at committee, as long as the chair is okay with it, we can put together a draft resolution for the next committee meeting to review what that would look like, and then that would go to council. There is no motion necessary here, and this is a for information item. So just wanted to advise there, and we want to hold off on any motions at this time, but we will draft it as long as the chair is okay with having that added to the agenda for the meeting in December. And then, Mr. Brown, would you like to speak to what can we do in the meantime? A little bit more of the temporary fixes, or, not killing two birds with one stone kind of deal.
Well, I know that folks are anxious to see some progress, but I guess I feel like, the county and MoDOT are going to select one consultant. Presumably there's 3 teams working and looking at the crash history in St. Louis County, trying to determine how they can best meet the goals that have been stated for that project, it does include a provision to evenly spread the monies around the county. So it's not going to be spent in one area. But once that decision is made, we'll know if it's going to move forward, and if it's not, then potentially there's 2 of those teams that will have some knowledge of the area. We could engage one of those engineering companies to evaluate, or maybe both of them, to provide us a proposal to look at that section of Old State Road in terms of what they feel is a good approach.
I just have a question. I know we've talked about this somewhere in the past, but I just want to clarify. So the county is opposed to limiting certain weight or length of trucks from going on Old State, correct?
That is correct. We have that on record.
Okay, that's what I thought, which seems ridiculous. Would be the easy first step, but
That is correct. And that's been requested of them.
Councilmember Edens.
I was just trying to think back on my time on council, and the last resolution that I remember passing, I think it would have been about Ellisville and Chair Garatani, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I really don't remember that going through a committee. So my suggestion would be for, representatives where this is in your district. And if chair is, you want to reach out, would just be to have a conversation with the mayor and see if he's amenable to placing this as a 4 action item on the next work session agenda at the council meeting. I think the reason I say that is because we've had a lot of discussions already at the council level. And so I think we could probably quickly agree on a resolution. I'm working under the assumption that this is probably going to pass with flying colors and that there wouldn't be a lot of amendments to any sort of language. But I'm just thinking about how, we're only meeting once a month for committees, and we're only meeting once a month for council. So you're looking at November or December. So I just can't imagine that he would say no. So I would encourage, those council members to reach out directly to him and see if you can't just get it on the work session agenda for action.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, if we can ask to have that put on a council agenda, then we would be able to do that. And that has happened, at times when, like Councilmember Evans mentioned, when there's a good feeling that, it would be able to pass successfully through council. If we can come up with the language there, hopefully we can get that on the agenda. All right, Nathan, Hopper, are you still got your hand up?
Sorry, yeah, I popped it back up there. So yeah, I guess I would say that then if essentially our immediate action items and what we can do right now is work on resolution language. I'm not a wordsmith by any means, so definitely that's why we have great people at the city. But I would say, I know we had originally mentioned, the drive towards limiting traffic size or truck sizes on Old State. But I think it would be great if we can, kind of craft the verbiage so it's really more of a resolution and a call for that, but also a greater investment in the safety of Old State, if that makes sense. I just feel like, yes, we'd love you to limit, in the near term, if you could take and limit that truck size would be fantastic, but just in general, take more consideration into Old State as far as safety measures of what can be considered and can be done there, even if it's done by the city, just something to kind of impress upon them that we as a city have a huge concern around Old State and that it seems to be falling on deaf ears at the county. So whatever we need to push them into, we need to continue to put that pressure on them. But so I guess I just don't want the scope of the resolution to be solely around limiting truck size and also encompassing that greater goal of getting them to really start considering what major steps need to be done to help increase Old State or increase safety on Old State.
What's that? Well then, don't think we have any, let me see, we do have the both city consultant agreement for the shared, for the Old State Road path that we can cover at this point. So looks like we've got some good action items there regarding what we heard from members of the public regarding the resolution, get that attention by the county. So let's move on then to the shared path there.
Thank you, Chair Gaetano. This next item is a request to engage a consultant to help us with the right-of-way acquisition for the Old State Road Shared Use Path project. So I think we are underway with that project. The preliminary design is complete and environmental clearances have been approved. And so our next step is essentially to start knocking on property owner doors and negotiating to acquire easements and right away to allow construction of the project. So to allow this to occur, we've in the past engaged a consultant to help us in this effort. We don't have the technical capabilities or the time to do it ourselves. We found it to be very helpful to bring in a consultant. So to do that, Dan put together a request for proposals. and we've advertised it. It's solicited for responses to that proposal request. And we did get 3 responses to it, OR Lockmuller Group and another firm called Urban Planning and Development Corporation. So of the 3, OR was the lowest firm significantly, and we have worked with them on our right-of-way acquisition projects pretty much exclusively in the past, frankly. Jan's working with them right now on our Manchester Taylor Road project, and that seems to be going pretty well. So essentially, the recommendation to the committee is we'd like to move forward with a contract with OR for the amount of $44,800 to assist us with the right-of-way and easement acquisition for the Old State Shared Use Path project. And with that, Dan, are there any questions?
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, in your memorandum for this request, I accept the. I have a page on it, but it says within 120 days of the property owner's receipt of the offer, ORC will either secure the necessary property rights or submit the property to the client for condemnation. Can you expound on that, please?
Well, typically, they have to essentially have an endpoint for them, so they will work with us and negotiate to acquire, come to an agreement with a property owner to obtain a property. And at some point, they have to say, look, we've done everything we feel we can do, and then turn it back to the city for potential condemnation. That's why that's in there. Understand that we would be working with them directly through this process. And then, if you recall, before we offer property owners compensation, that will go to the city council in closed session for essentially your review and approval. So those decisions are typically approved at the city council before, we actually make those final acquisitions. And certainly, if we decided to take a step towards condemnation, the city council would be very involved in that. We have not done that as of yet on a project, so we don't anticipate it here. I would hope that we can negotiate and obtain these easements. We've been successful with our call on other projects, and we are currently having good success with them on our Manchester Taylor resurfacing projects.
It's essentially a contract date for them. Excuse me.
But I think that's part of my concern. Is this specifically in the contract? But even though it is, then the city council can override that.
Almost definitely, council member.
Okay,
That's a decision of the city council, not.
And we don't have intent to condemn. The intent is to acquire these, but that's our option after 120 days. We can talk about that, but that's not our intent.
Well, that's what I thought. And then I read this and I was not quite clear on how that was going to work because it's stated in the contract. So
Anyone want to make a motion on this one here? Or any shared use that development agreement?
I move that we accept the contract with OR.
There's a second. Made by Councilmember Hopper. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstain? That motion passed. So back to the agenda items where we left off. All right, so we have several items under administration for information here. So what I'll ask is hopefully we can keep these brief, these for information items. We do have quite a bit still on the agenda to cover tonight. So first item, update on the elevator repair.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. I just wanted to give you all an update, considering we had expected the elevator to be up and running at this time. At that last meeting on October 10th, the department had reported that TK Elevator had lost the plug that connected the controller drive back into the elevator unit. At this time, the TK Elevator has replaced that plug for us. They came back, not last Friday, but the Friday before, and reinstalled the controller drive. At that time, the city did have our insurance carrier Chubb and the independent consultant that the insurance carrier had hired, Tech Loss, on site. At that time, they had hooked up the controller drive. The elevator began to have power to it. And unfortunately, they then discovered that the door drive was completely damaged as well. So at this time, they are stating that the door drive would also have to be repaired. There's also another layer of kind of frustration here is that during this entire endeavor, the first thing that happened was, the elevator stopped working during a power outage, 2 power outages that occurred back in February. And the first thing that was reported after doing an initial diagnostic testing was that the elevator's control drive was damaged by those power outages, which made a lot of sense because the elevator stopped functioning properly right after those power outages occurred. So at this time, the city moved forward with that assumption and informed TK Elevator and all the other individuals that we reached out to during the RFP process that we would be reaching out to the insurance carrier for coverage. In this case, the city and the insurance carrier has reached out to TK Elevator on multiple occasions for the information regarding the diagnostics that made them believe that the elevator's controller drive was the key issue and it was definitively damaged by some kind of power outage or something that was a little bit more of a force majeure. But in this case, that information has not been given up by TK. They did provide a little bit more of an explanation in an email today, and Tech Loss along with Chubb are currently going over that as we speak, and they should be getting back to us soon. But right now, we're kind of in a set of limbo because they are expecting the city or our insurance carrier to have to now pay for a repaired door drive on top of the already pretty large $53,000 charge to repair the controller drive. The department is available for any questions. We have spoken with the city attorney just to kind of see what our options are, considering we do need to have a functioning elevator. But I just want to make sure that we're not being, taken advantage of by a company here, and that we're, getting our money's worth and we're not just throwing money at a problem to get it done, but we do need a functional elevator. So we'll be exploring all options, and we'll be reporting back as soon as we can. Thank you.
Member Clark?
Yeah, since this has been going on since February, we haven't had this elevator functional. Is there a plan B that we can use to put up some kind of signage or something outside near the accessible parking places, or something that says, if you have city business to attain to, go to the back parking lot. And if you are going to the police station or to council city meetings, to go through the front, just so people know before they get up there that they can't get to one or the other.
Certainly, Councilor Clark, we can definitely look into that. And if Mr. Vunich is on here still, I think that me, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Vunich can have a discussion tomorrow about getting moving on that and just have that located somewhere near the front of City Hall, maybe at the entrance of the front. Just stating that if you need to access the second floor, back parking would be more realistic. But I think the main key here is having something that's temporary, but also nice enough that it fits the Wildwood aesthetic.
I would agree, but you need to have it where the person that possibly is in a wheelchair doesn't have to come up to the city, to the front door to know they have to go to the back, because it takes a little effort to get out and get your wheelchair and get up to the door. So if there's some way to have the sign big enough or at a place that is more visual.
Joe, yeah. Oh, sorry, Chair Garritano.
I was gonna say, I think that, the handicap spots usually have a pole in front with a sign that indicates handicap parking. Maybe some little placard or something that goes underneath it could just say, use the rear lot, like what you said about using the rear lot, like in the front and vice versa. And that would maybe be in addition to one at the front door as well.
Something big enough that they would see it.
Did you want to ask Director Vunich, a question?
I was just gonna say, Mr. Vunicher, is there any hesitation of adding adding our own little bit of a signage to those handicap signs that are in front of that parking spot?
Mr. Lee, I believe since they are temporary in nature and intended to make the building more accessible than it is now, I think we could find a suitable addition. And I would also note, we could probably do something on our website just so that if people are visiting it first and coming here to do business, we can have something that just says preferred accessible access is to the rear of the building through the double doors.
All right. Thank you for that update there. So we'll keep moving forward with the agenda here. So the next item that we have under for information is the charter NDA.
Yep, thank you, Chair Garitano. Tonight, the department is presenting to the committee the NDA that has been finalized by city administrator, the city attorney, and Spectrum. This NDA is going to allow the city to get additional information from Spectrum or Charter that we wouldn't necessarily be able to retrieve. That's a little bit more proprietary in nature. One of those items being inclusive of the internet speed data that we have been wanting to kind of get after for the entire city for the phase 2 of the project. So what this document is pretty much outlining is stating that the information provided that's listed as confidential would be only utilized for the deployment of a phase 2, or if it needs to be added to like a phase 1, if we're looking at the evaluating phase 1, that could be fine too, but really more so project oriented and not utilized for other purposes or utilized to go with another firm to say, okay, you can create this pocket over here, you can use this pocket over here. So it's really just protecting Spectrum's information and also protecting the competitors that they might have information on as well. In this case, the city and the individuals that are tasked with the administration of the project, which would include this committee, everyone would have to pretty much be willing to protect this information, and we would not be making additional copies, and we'd be taking every step necessary to ensure that the data and the documents or the concepts or the strategies, ideas are all kept kind of in-house, and we'll make decisions based off that information. But once this NDA is signed, Spectrum and Charter has stated that they will provide the city with that internet speed data, which will then allow us to cross-compare the data we have from our resident inquiries, and then also potentially add or subtract addresses based off the current speed data available. The department's available for any questions at this time. If there's no objection, the department will move forward with getting this non-disclosure signed, and we'll get that information as soon as we can so we can get a phase 2 moving. Thank you.
Great. This is just for information, so again, no action required there. Again, this is the interest of getting phase 2 internet access to those folks who still need it. Lauren, I see your hand up, and then Tracy, I think you had your hand up. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much for, I guess, making just progress. That's wonderful. I just have a couple concerns. What is keeping, Charter Spectrum from deciding that information that we've tried to previously share with our residents, so the maps that we're updating on our website, or areas that have been left behind aren't suddenly, quote, proprietary information? Because I remember one of the things that was, quite disturbing when we started this process before you were here a couple of years ago was that the initial list of residents that would get internet was considered proprietary by Charter. And any, specific information about streets was not even welcome to be shared with the public. So I'm just concerned that instead of just being able to receive new information, suddenly the basic questions that my residents expect to be answered, I'll no longer be able to answer if we sign this.
So in this case, and that's a very good question, Councilman Reed, in this case, just like we did before, so some of that data and some of that information was proprietary. So the initial maps that had been shared with the city, that was proprietary information. What we did was we actually recreated those maps with our own software and our own programming. And that allowed us to then share it because it wasn't technically produced by Spectrum. I know that's kind of a weird workaround. That being said, the current stuff that is out there would not be covered under this agreement because this stuff also has to be marked as confidential. So going forward, there could be limitations off what we could share. That being said, the list of addresses currently out there will be approved by the city council. Especially in this case, it'll be pretty transparent based off the list that was provided at a previous meeting. That list would be provided pretty much the same way moving forward. So the city would be creating that list. So we would have full ownership of that data because we're the ones that submitted it. But that being said, there will be probably some more limitations than we would normally have. We're kind of trading, getting this project done in absolute terms for, probably having to keep some of the more information back where we might want to be able to share that. I will say there is some trade-offs here, but if we want to make sure phase 2 encompasses every home that needs this internet, I think it is pertinent that we get that full-on Spectrum internet speed data that they have for not just Spectrum, but other internet providers as well.
Okay, fair enough. It's just, you can kind of, I feel like we're in a car hurtling maybe towards a brick wall and I can kind of see it coming, but we'll, I guess, kind of have us over a barrel. It's information like. Thanks.
No, I just have a quick question. So if we get that internet speed information, we're not allowed to, would we then not be allowed to tell someone that maybe didn't make the list as to why they didn't make the list? Because here's your speed and this is the speed it has to be in order to qualify. Is that something we would not be able to explain to people and tell them that that's why they didn't make the list?
So that is a very good question as well. So in this case, if that data was provided to us that stated that this person was, they would be able to be generally shared that individuals that were taken off the original list did not meet this internet speed, but to be able to say, hey, we checked the confidential information source that was provided to us by Spectrum and your address was listed at 586 over 586 download and a 37 upload speed. That's why you're not getting the internet. If we were stating those exact facts, that would be considered a breach of this disclosure agreement. But if it's just more so, hey, we could maybe have that disclaimer. If you were on this original list, which we have currently as a public document under our administrative documents, and it's can be requested by the public. If you were on that list and you were removed from it, the reason for that was because we did an audit of internet speed across the entire city, and it was found that your address was well above the 100 megabits per second over 20 megabits per second threshold.
Thank you.
So yeah, it does limit how we have to package this information though, which I think is a crucial aspect here. And and that being said, we could maybe have a little bit more, flesh this out a little bit and talk with the city attorney a little bit more. But I do know that with phase 1 kind of coming to a conclusion here, hopefully by April of 2024, I know we are, kind of trying to rush forward to see what this is going to cost and overall just kind of get this on the docket for 2024 in general.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little concerned about taking people off the list because, we told everyone at first that if you are in the situation to contact us and we would put you on the list. And is there a possibility that the speeds that are wrong and that the person would really be on the list by their speeds in their home? Is this
Typically, sorry.
No, I'm just asking if that process would be non-fallible.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Clark. Typically, in that case, we would be able to kind of look at it based off a case-by-case basis. So if we were able to have address A, for instance, that they reported that they do not like their internet speed right now, they're not getting good service, and then we were able to see on the internet speed data provided to us that they're currently getting a gig of data, so they already have fiber running to them, but maybe they're just not happy with that, or they're currently and a big key here is what they're able to get and what they're currently paying for. because some individuals are able to get up to a gig of speed, but they're only paying for, 500 megabits per second. So it all depends on what you're paying for as well, but we'll be able to kind of look at the overall scenario. If they're out in more of a rural area and they're somehow getting a 1,000 megabits per second of download speed, then in that case, that could be seen as an outlier. We might have to check into that a little bit further. But if it's an individual that reported they have terrible internet, but it shows that they have 1,000 megabits per second download speed, and they're in a very densely populated urban area on the eastern side of Wildwood, then we might be seeing someone that might just not be happy with their current subscription. So this might be just a way to kind of filter those pieces out, but we will treat those on a case-by-case basis. And it would not be removed lightly. We'll be sure to, as the department, outline any and all households that would be removed after being included in that form that was provided at in the meeting in September.
Okay. That's it then, right? That's under for information, so no action.
Yep.
On that. All right, then we'll keep moving here. Next is the for information on deer management funding options.
Yes. Sugar Tunnel, I have, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have investment management services for action for one.
Oh,
Am I?
I'm looking at the printed copy here. So you're right.
Oh,
It's a discrepancy between what is printed and what we have here in the reading. Because under for information on the website here, it says that the for action is the investment management services.
okay. So under the investment management services, and sorry about that.
Just procedural reasons, we'll just make a motion that will cover the deer management funding options as stated.
Okay.
It's on the printed
That-
version. Yeah, it's number 3 for information in administration on the printed version.
4A3.
By what's on the website.
Well, actually, what's
This is-
posted, that's what's the actual, what's the
This is
posted version?
printed from the website today.
It should be a for action item. The deer management, there should be 3 admin for action items.
Website is for action.
Website.
So we'll go with what is posted, which is the posted one.
Well, it would be the one on the web because I printed this yesterday.
If we typically print the one that we post on the web and put it upstairs.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure we're consistent.
Do you want me
Okay.
to check what's upstairs?
You know what, check it just in case. That way we're staying aligned with what's posted.
I printed
Agreed.
this.
In this case, Chair Garitano, if it was, let's just say that it's put under for information for some reason, can there be a motion, and this is more of a procedural question that might be better for John, but could a motion be made to bring that into a for action item if it's the deer management funding options? Because I know that was one that was important. Yeah, I don't think it can be, so,
No,
yeah,
We
okay,
gotta stay consistent.
yeah.
Put it-
That would be something that would just change.
It would have been just like moved up one or the other.
Right, yeah.
The posted agenda has investments, tree lighting, and deer management for action.
All right, so that would be based on what is the website version, so. it'll be
That's
on there. Thank you for validating that on the post.
I apologize.
So,
Thank you.
However, we have printed here, which seems like it was printed yesterday. I see the date and time. All right, so that's what we got there. All right. So
Okay, so we're covering investment management services first?
So yes, we will move now to the for action section of administration, which is investment services.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. So wanted to briefly cover this. There's no real new information other than just one quick clarification for the investment management services that were brought to the city's attention and has been discussed in multiple meetings. One item wanted to bring up was that in the meeting that we discussed this last, the department did mention that Commerce had additional fees based off their answer to the follow-up Q&A that we sent out. That being said, we had touched base with them just to clarify, and they were stating in that answer that that's what they typically would charge to a normal, customer, but Commerce Trust would actually not charge us that any additional fees other than what was stated and the proposal that they submitted to us. Another item I wanted to bring up just in general is that this year the city is expecting to bring in around $1 million in interest. So we've been doing pretty well this year when it comes to our investments. We are limited in what we can do. That being said, I do think it's been a pretty healthy year with the bond market being where it's at and the CD rates being where they're at this year as well. But just kind of going over where we've come from here is that we did receive proposals from 5 different firms. That being said, we were able to find a independent firm or independent individual to review each of the proposals and then provide a non-biased and pretty much just an individual completely out of the realm of Wildwood. And that was David Saucier, the current director of investments for the state of Missouri. When he conducted this review, he was the assistant director of investments for the state of Missouri. And he had stated his overall recommendation was that the city should move forward, if we're moving forward with a firm to cover our investments, that we should move forward with Columbia Capital as the investment manager while retaining Commerce Trust as the actual custodian, so our actual bank. And at this time, the department's bringing this back up based off of motion that was discussed at the last meeting, was pretty much to get clarification on that Commerce Trust issue that we had, because we were kind of ironing that out to see if there were additional fees. And there were a couple extra questions that we had discussed, but we had already had answers to. So the department is seeking seeking feedback from the committee on what steps we want to take moving forward. Thank you.
Up for discussion, anyone like to either any questions, or if you want to proceed with the recommendation that is noted here? Tracy,
I'd like to proceed with the recommendation.
right? So you are going with, based on what the recommendation is, that that's noted here, is the city move forward with Columbia Capital as the investment manager while retaining Commerce Trust as a custodian, correct? Is there someone that wishes to second that? Councilman McCutcheon, any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone abstain? I'll abstain. And anyone oppose? All right, and that motion passes. So we will now move on to the next part of the agenda, which is the holiday tree lighting ceremony.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. So the holiday tree lighting ceremony has been a very popular event for the city of Wildwood over the last couple of years. It's just been gaining in popularity. And one of the items that makes it kind of a special thing is that it takes place near the holidays, and it's a time where businesses and residents are able to kind of culminate in town center to celebrate the holidays. In this case, typically this event is organized and primarily hosted, even though financially that wasn't completely paid for, by the Wildwood Business Association. In the recent weeks or last couple months, it's come to the city's attention that the Wildwood Business Association will probably not be able to take on the organization of this event, and especially not the providing funding for the event. The city In this case, what the department's asking for tonight is for the city to bring the holiday tree lighting ceremony into the city's purview as a city event. It has been a city event financially over the last couple of years, as you can see under the expenditures related to the event under the attachments over the last for 2020, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I believe 2022 is in there as well. 2020 is not in there, sorry. But the city has been paying for this event anyways. We just weren't able to state that, you know, it was a full-blown city event. It was supposed to be an event where the Wildwood Business Association could reach out to their members and really get a good local presence under the businesses here. That being said, without them being there, the city has an opportunity to take advantage of an awesome event that we have seen a lot of success with. I was there at the event last year, and I believe there was probably a good 2,000 people that visited and a lot of individuals. It's a short, quick event. It's a little bit cold, but it's a short, quick event that, you know, just brings out, you know, good amount of people. So if the event were to move forward, it would take place on Saturday, December 2nd, 2023 from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. with at 5 p.m. the tree actually being lit. It's expected to cost around $10,000 if we want to improve upon the tree that we had last year. We had heard some comments that the tree that we had last year was not up to snuff, and we want to make sure that looks good and represents the city well. So we do expect it to be a little bit more expensive. In this case, this same exact item has been presented to the Economic Development Committee and the Planning and Parks Committee, with both getting recommendations to send to City Council for approval. At this time, the city is kind of in waiting. We have Santa locked in if we want to move forward. We have the carolers locked in if we want to move forward. So we have the pieces in place. In this case, we just want to make sure that the council is fully behind adopting this event and moving forward with it in the future. I will just make a quick note that the business community really enjoys this event. It's a free opportunity for them where they used to have to pay for it under the business association. We're offering it this year if we were to move forward, that they can have any business in Wildwood can have a tent and can decorate a tree on Plaza Drive for free. So it's a great way to promote their business and just provide an outlet for businesses to connect with residents. So the department is available for any questions at this time. And one other quick note is that right now it's not going to change anything it doesn't have any budgetary impact. We already had put money aside for this event in last year's budget and this year's budget. So nothing's really changing other than the fact that Wildwood will be the main host on the banner, if you will. Thank you.
Any questions or discussion? If not, look for a motion to proceed with the recommendation. I see Lauren with the hand up.
Yep, I'll make the motion, and I'm really looking forward to this. I know I had hoped that we would kind of take it over as a city before. I was told previously by the city administrator before you, no, resounding no. So this is just what we need to take the event to the next level and really plan. My thought would be to work in maybe the West St. Louis Chamber of Commerce. They're still the Chamber of Commerce for the city of Wildwood. They have a lot of resources. I'm sure they'd like to partner with an event. I don't think if the WBA is, dissolving, that you have to worry about politics or stepping on toes or anything like that. So it might be just a nice opportunity. I'd have maybe a talk with the caroling group. That was the least I've ever heard them last year. And at one point they walked away from the event and stood near the parking garage, which was just completely bizarre as a choice. So maybe have a talk with those volunteers. There's also a handbell association that includes at least some of the churches in Wildwood, but they would be able to perform. I think the event needs a little bit more entertainment. The main draw is Santa, but there's not a lot to keep people there once the light goes on, or at least walking through the business booths, because you want to make sure that there's, kind of something different, because otherwise you're just not going to get, different people to come out. And so anyway, thanks for all your hard work on this. My dream and that of a former council member, Greg Nani, was to have a snap together ice rink one year, but we could never have a budget. So if we have a money tree for a portable ice skating rink, I'd love that in the future.
All right, we have a motion. Is that a second, Teresa?
It is a second, and I would suggest that we maybe let the special school district excuse me, or the schools know that there will be interpreters for the Santa, and that way the deaf children will be ready to come. They do have a signing Santa at the college in Flow Valley, St. Louis Community College in Flow Valley area that same day, but in the morning. So I think that the children would be very happy to see this.
All right, well, we've got a motion made on the floor, so all those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Or opposed? All right, that motion passes. So next on the posted agenda is your management funding options. So we'll move forward with that.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. I know this was, and this is kind of speaking off Councilmember Jaxie's comment during the last council meeting. He wanted some, I forget the actual exact wording of it, but courses of action that needed to be prepared. And we do have that tonight. Tonight, we have 4 different options we can go down. These options were ran by our auditing team over at Reuben Brown to see if they could be done. So all these items have been cleared by them. So what we were able to find, there are 4 options available to fund the 5-year program if the council as a whole decides to do so. In this case, the first option would be an amendment to the 2024 budget that would be done next year, could be done at mid-year. This is what occurred this year, considering the fact that the first year of the program was not included. So the city council would approve the budget as is, and then the funding for the second year or the third year, whatever it might be, in this case, it would be the second year, would be approved at mid-year in 2024. City would proceed, and then we would have to then include it or figure out the issue once we were putting together the 2025 budget. Might not be the best approach. Commitment of unassigned fund balance. So the city council could choose to utilize the unassigned fund balance to cover the expenses of the entire deer management program. This option would most likely lead to expenditures exceeding revenue for each year after 2023 if no other revenue sources are introduced. The third option and the fourth option, which I think are are interesting in themselves, and these are the 2 that had to be not approved, but ran by our auditing team to see if they were even options to begin with. The city council could elect to pass an ordinance encumbering funds in 2023. The city does expect to have a decent amount of money, a decent amount of revenue over expenditures this year based off of the $1,010,000 settlement that we received from Charter Communications. In this case, the council could pass an ordinance to encumber funds out of the general fund to cover the entire 5-year program. The entire 5-year program is expected to cost roughly around $1 million. So in this case, the city council, and that we are currently around that number for what we expect our revenues to exceed expenditures. So we could say, okay, we're going to encumber $1 million out of the 2023 budget, out of the revenues from 2023, and apply those over the next 5 years. In that case, it would be that encumbrance would be marked against the 2023 year-end balance and not any additional balances moving forward, because those funds would be encumbered and already marked against. So it actually would allow us to have a balanced budget still moving forward, but also utilize those funds that are currently kind of being decided what we're going to do with them. The other option is option 4. If the $1,010,000 is used for another purpose, or if we don't want to use this for that purpose, that's fine too, or it's not approved till 2024, we can actually create a new fund, which could be just titled the Deer Management Fund, whatever we would like. And what would be done is we would put a specific amount of money in that fund from the general fund, and it would show a transfer out. It wouldn't actually show it as an expenditure just as yet. This approach would commit those funds that were accumulated from the unassigned general fund balance, and it would align it with the city's fund balance. It would align with our city fund balance policy. The general fund revenues would still exceed expenditures for our operating, but the transfers out would be recorded separately. And in general, what it would do is this separate fund would show that expenditures were obviously exceeding revenues because the revenue would only be a one-time occurrence because you'd only be putting money in that account one time. But this would allow us to pretty much separate out the expenses related to deer management from the operating budget. So we're not sitting there and having to have a lopsided operating budget because we want to take on this deer management project. So we have a couple options here tonight. Overall, you know, if we want to move forward with deer management, we just gotta, you know, either way, the council just has to make a decision on how we're going to fund it. So these are the options that are available to us today. The other option, I guess it's not listed here, is that we would just not move forward with any additional years, but I know the council and, you know, I think the team here is pretty adamant about continuing deer management and making sure this is a top priority for our city. So the department is available for any questions at this time, and thank you.
All right, I have Teresa here in the room and Lauren online. So Teresa, I'll let you go first.
Well, looking over this, and we talked about this a lot last time, so I'm just gonna go ahead and make a motion that we create a new fund. I think it's number 4, create a new fund from the unassigned general fund to be used for the entire 5 years for the deer culling project, and provide as long as we provide White Buffalo with all the needed resources that they've requested, such as the properties, going out and finding the properties that they need to use, and then to use their 2023 action as a means for evaluating their success rate. And we would have an error factor of whatever we didn't supply them, like if we didn't give them enough properties. And as well, I would ask that we provide a written plan of the project and not just leave it till the next year and then till the next year, that we have an overarching plan that delineates the timing as well as maintenance in between the culling projects. So we need to have that in there to if we're going to use archery or whatever, we need to have to maintain so that we don't get back to the place that we started from before we get to the next year. And that's my motion.
So did you get that, or?
I missed a little something. So I said, Councilmember Clark made a motion to create a new fund. Was it from the unassigned general fund? As long as we provide all the necessary things that White Buffalo requested. It includes to provide a written overarching plan that delineates the timing and maintenance of the culling project to maintain the progress.
And that should include that it's the 5-year, what is it, 5-year project, including this year would be 5 years, right?
That's
So
correct.
In the entire 5-year project.
In that case too, Michelle, I know this might be just a typo, but it would just be the general fund, not the unassigned general fund.
What it said here. Approach would commit funds from the accumulated unassigned general fund balance.
Yeah, so that, and quite honestly, what that means, that's more of a technical term, but it's coming from our general fund. But it just means that what that means is that those funds were technically unassigned at this time because revenues exceeded expenditures. So there was nothing speaking for those dollars at that time.
Great. You made a motion. There's a need for a second. All right, that is Rob with the second there. Lauren, you have your hand up. Is that related to the motion?
Yeah, I was actually going to make that motion. I applaud Councilmember Clark for getting there first. Just want to say the reason I think this makes sense is because, you know, we don't ever want to put ourselves in a position where we may not be around as a council, but we're expecting future council members to dedicate funds that may or may not exist mid-year, that they're going to have the same priority. The other thing is, this debate about what to do with the, $1 million is going to be a bogged down heavy fight with a lot of hands going for pieces of the pie. And we know that this is an important project. It's one of the top 3 things I hear about. We've studied it, we have a plan, and it will get lost in that argument. And that other money will go to those other projects, whether it's internet, trash rebate, or watershed erosion, or building maintenance, whatever. So we don't want this to drop through the cracks. This makes the most sense in terms of accounting, transparency, and future planning. And so, let's do this one. Please support it.
I do have a question, maybe Thomas, and I don't see any other hands up, so I'll go ahead and ask. Thomas, you drafted this here, so can you provide just some clarity here? This number 4 regarding the creation of the new fund. Elaborate a little bit more that you would commit funds from the accumulated unassigned general fund balance.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Garitano. So right now, we could either, this year, if we decided to, we could create that deer management fund, and it would show a transfer out because you're technically not, it could be done next year too. It would technically not be spending money because it's still the city's money. You would just be transferring it out, and you'll see that on our expenditure reports and our budgets. You'll see those transfer out numbers. That money would not be an expenditure because it hasn't been spent yet, but we would put 1 million, or we could actually work with White Buffalo to get a concrete number of what the next 4 years will cost. And we would say, okay, that's the number. That would be a transferred out number to this new fund, the Deer Management Fund. And then that money would be not part of our operating budget. And that's what helps us here, is that it allows our operating budget to still work within our revenues, but at the same time, we could still access monies that we have put aside for this project. It's practically earmarking the funds. But in this case, if we did it in 2024, and that money is spent over the next couple of years, I mean, there could be, it could technically still utilize reserve funding. At the end of the day, if we have if we have expenditures exceeding revenues or getting close to over the next couple of years, and we're utilizing those funds from this fund, it just won't be coming out of the operating budget.
That was going to be my second part to the question here is, when I read that bullet point there, it concerns me when I read general fund revenues would still exceed expenditures and transfers out would be recorded separately. So are you saying that we are setting ourselves up for a situation where we're going to have more expenses than money that we are taking in? Or could you elaborate? I'm just trying to understand
So
that.
in this case, yes. So our general fund, and what the general fund is referring to is pretty much saying that our operating budget would be balanced, but the Deer Management Fund would obviously have expenditures exceeding revenues because this fund has no access to a revenue source. There's no tax assigned to deer management. There's no money coming in to fund that project. So what this does, it sets it off to the side so it's not impacting the actual operating budget. But yes, this would most likely still be dipping in to the reserve funds over the long haul.
Right, I do have another follow-up, but I'll hold off on that. Teresa, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that my motion included not just White Buffalo's project, but also the maintenance portion of it. So that would need cost evaluation as well.
Any other questions or comments on there? Deborah?
Yeah, City Administrator, can you please explain the difference between the number 3 option and the number 4 option?
Yes. So number 3 would be us dedicating that right now, and this could be done literally at the next council meeting. At the next council meeting, we could introduce an ordinance stating that the city council would like to encumber which means we want to take funds moving forward. We want to earmark them right now in 2023 going forward. We want to earmark 1 million or whatever number we decide for deer management. It might reach up to 1 million, but could be less. $1 million is going forward. And then if you earmark it this year, our revenues are expected to pretty drastically exceed expenditures because of those settlement funds. So then you can still have a balanced budget where your revenues are exceeding expenditures. That being said, if you encumber the funds next year, if we're still spending out of that money that we earmarked or we encumbered, that's not going against our I guess the bottom line when you're trying to compare the revenues versus expenditures. So that's where it's beneficial in that regard. So the next year, we already covered those funds. We've already earmarked them, against the balance sheet. So they've already taken the hit against our revenues. So going forward, that wouldn't, since we have the money to cover it this year, this would pretty much just be utilizing that million for this project. Regardless, we're probably going to have to encumber those funds anyways, so we can utilize them, because come January 1st, the money from that settlement fund will go into the reserve funds. And if we touch it, it'll still show a negative because it's all done fiscally. When it goes to option 4, this is considering creating a new fund. So in this case, just like we have our capital improvement sales tax fund, we have our road and bridge fund, we have different funds. This would be taking a new fund, and we would transfer out of our general fund. We would transfer monies out of there and put it in this new fund called Deer Management. We could have, in this case, if we approved it quickly, we could have the $1 million cover it from the back end of the settlement funds that we have. But if not, we are looking at a situation here where we're most likely still going to have expenditures outpacing revenues in the overall scheme of things. But the operating budget, which is typically what you want to keep at a steady incline because they're not one-off, that's general maintenance, that's where you'll still have a balanced budget. So the difference is, first and foremost, if we want to do option 3, you have to do that in 2023. The council would have to vote to encumber the funds in 2023. For option 4, the new fund could be created at any time. It could be done this year, next year, and it just has to be approved by ordinance.
So the new fund could be approved by maybe the next 2 council meetings. And
Yes.
so we start our 5-year project in 2023 instead of 2024.
No, so in this case, we've already approved funding for the 2023 project. So the first year of it, we already approved that by ordinance. We approved the first year of the contract. So in this case, 2023 is completely covered. This would be approving the next 4 to 5 years of the project that we estimate that will need to happen.
And that's option 4.
That's option 4 and option 3. So right now, no matter what, the first year of Deer Management has been approved by ordinance and funding has been allocated towards it. But for the rest of it, so the rest of the program, the multi-year program, options 3 or 4 or whatever, they are covering those years specifically. So we're pretty much answering the question of how would we like to fund this program moving forward?
Rick?
Maybe it doesn't need to be said, but just keep in mind, all you're trying to do is budget the money. We'll still have to come to the council to approve those expenditures every year. Those contracts will still go to the council for approval if it exceeds $10,000. So
Yeah, my concern was to make sure that we had the money and had it earmarked for Deer Management for 5 years. And I couldn't get that out of number 4. So that's my concern, is to make sure we do this as a package.
Yeah, so this would be, we would determine both options. We would determine a number, and then they would both be earmarking these funds. One would be in option 3, you would be earmarking a specific amount to be encumbered. In option 4, you would be earmarking a specific amount to be transferred to the new Deer Management Fund, if that makes sense.
So the $1 million would be transferred in would come into our general fund, and then we would transfer it out.
Yeah, so right now that million is in our general fund, so that would be utilized in that case for option 3. But if, say we spend the million on internet, or we spend it on trash rebate, whatever we decide to spend it on, or if we don't, the new fund creation, what that is doing is it's practically separating deer management out of the operating, which after discussions with our Director of Public Works and just the team in general, there's really no way out of our operating to cover an extra $215,000 expense over the next 4 years without introducing a new revenue source. So what this is doing, it's pretty much acknowledging that we have a project here that we have to get done, and it's not something that's permanent. It's something that's going to be done as a one-off basis. I know it's multiple years, but it's a project that has a sunset, if that makes sense. But yes, the million, if we were to approve it sooner rather than later, could be utilized in this case where we would have completely this expense is covered over the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll just make a comment here. I'll kind of take off my chair hat and just my council member Ward 8 hat. I totally get and understand, deer management is something that's important here. I'm not comfortable with the motion on the floor, and I'll tell you why, just so you know why I'll vote this way. Is certainly we're committing right now that we're gonna take money out, expenses more than revenues. That's something I think there's an unease feeling around it. I'd be comfortable with like a number 1 option right now. We haven't had that discussion at council regarding the $1 million settlement money, but I know I've heard feedback from people that they'd like us to see it put to some use here. And right now, my phone, email, rings more about Old State Road safety, internet phase 2, which not only affects me, but other people. I think those people watching, if they were watching this meeting right now, they would be like, wait, you committed to put that money towards deer management? And I've been talking to you for years and months that, we need to get phase 2 internet fixed. And now you still don't have a way to pay for phase 2 internet because you just put all your money towards deer. And then the other big thing is we haven't done anything even like that for like other projects like the Village Green, which we're gonna need more than ever. The Village Green, we have got some funding sources, we got some grant money. But again, that's another one right here where we're gonna lose our home that's been graciously offered to the city. And without another location, that I think is another big priority too. And I know they're all important priorities. There's the safety with Old State Road. You just heard about it tonight. So I'm just not comfortable right now committing to like a number 4 option, which is the motion on the floor. I'd be comfortable with a number 1, but I think it also depends on the conversation that we have as a council regarding that settlement money, because I think that will dictate what we end up doing. The other thing too is that by putting all the money into the budget for this deer management, kind of feel like we're telling White Buffalo, it doesn't matter to me how well you perform, we're already going to put the money aside to pay for it. I'd rather keep the pressure on them to deliver in phase 1 and say, if you do a good job, we're going to keep paying for it versus, us just saying we're going to pay for it now and set it aside, so it puts pressure on them to deliver, because I have not yet seen them deliver the work. And we're doing that like with Spectrum now. We're not paying them. I mean, I know we wouldn't be paying White Buffalo all at once. I think, paying in phases like that is a good message. But I think the key thing for me is just right now, that conversation that's going to happen at council, especially with that internet phase 2, I've got people that have been asking for that. And if I don't have a way to pay for that, and then they say, well, you found a way to pay for deer management, but you couldn't get the internet. I think that's going to be a big complaint. So that's just where I'm at, position wise. Who's got the hands up?
Jaxie.
All right, so Rob.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for your comments just now. Based on what you were just saying, I would like to just add, the council approved $3 million from the reserve to pay for internet at one point. So I guess I have a level of confidence that because we've only had, I think, one member change since that vote, that we still have support for internet, and it's our number one priority. So I guess I feel very comfortable that the council is going to find the money and approve the money for phase two. I certainly will be the first one in line to do it. I happen to believe that, the $1 million that it's going to cost us over the course of 5 years, it's actually, we'd be doing this exactly the way we're doing it with Spectrum right now. If we approve the $1 million tonight, it doesn't mean that we give them a check and we give them carte blanche support saying that they've got this. In fact, as Director Brown just said, we will have to vote every year to spend that money, give that money to them in a contract. So I feel like that's a good checks and balances to make sure that not just White Buffalo is holding up to whatever their end of the bargain is, but that we, the city, are, as Councilmember Clark mentioned, we have a responsibility here to manage the rest of this program, which requires both a plan and then that plan that's got to include some sort of a maintenance of this, which be it archery or whatever other sources we want to use to try to help keep the numbers maintained once, hopefully we have success with this contractor. I don't know. I guess I'm just I'm in support of moving this ball forward. I could have gone either way, devoted the $1 million or voted, supported towards the $1 million that we've got, or this number 4 that Councilmember Clark has made a motion for, and that's why I seconded it, and I will continue to support it.
Lauren?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, my residents are the ones that are included in phase 2. I know you have one neighborhood, I have several. My residents are also very concerned about deer strikes. To anybody that's also concerned about other road maintenance and that is here tonight, I would just like to say, I hear you, but you can also have deer strikes on any road, right? So that we have that throughout our city. So this is the chance to improve safety on all the roads and also limit chronic wasting disease. So to quote you, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And if anybody here is concerned about telling their residents, oh, I found money for deer, but I didn't find it for internet, then don't vote for a trash rebate. That's very simple. You can do both. But we've talked about this to death. I don't trust necessarily future generations to plan for this. We fought tooth and nail to get this where it needed to be. And again, depending on where revenue is, it may not have to dip out of savings. It probably will, but it may not. And so we don't know that yet, but we can do good planning for the next 5 years by making this fund balance. And so you still have that option to look your residents in the face and tell them, hey, I can also pay for internet too. That absolutely exists. But we have to do this too. And I get it, because these are my residents that want both too. These are my residents that are hitting deer on the road, and they're your residents too. So we can do both.
All right, I got, who was first here?
I think I was.
All right, Deborah.
Yeah, so I concur with Councilmember Jaskey and Councilmember Edens. To reply to a couple of your comments, I think we've set aside $6 million for internet. I think that's correct. And we can have our event at the same location where the Village Green is going in. We use a flat surface right now. So I don't think we have to actually construct, the Village Green in order to hold our Celebrate Wildwood there, or we could hold it at the community park until we got the Village Green in. And again, I get calls and complaints. I mean, Ward 5's got one of the most intense areas as far as deer goes, and then there's the health concern because the deer do carry diseases. And they are transferable to human beings. So I'm going to go ahead and support council members Teresa's motion. Sorry.
I just have a quick question. If by some miracle, after we've made this new fund and we get 5 years from now and there's money left in the fund and we don't need it, can it be moved somewhere else? Or is that it because we made a special fund?
Ms. Nyan, thank you for the question. In that case, Councilmember Nyan, we would, if there was money left over in the fund, that money would then be closed out and transferred back into the general fund.
Yeah, and Rob said most of the things that I wanted to follow up with, but also that the deer safety is number one. Safety is the primary reason that we need this, but we also have we're responsible for taking care of the environment as well, and to make sure that we don't do something that 10, 20 years down the road, we are sorry for. And there are environmental issues that happen because of the overpopulation of deer, as well as the deer health, the deer, you hate to see a sick deer out there, and that's happening a lot. But the environmental, they don't have enough food, so they're eating a lot of things that we need in our environment. So there's a lot of issues related to the deer. And of course, the safety first would come before having events, although they are very important. We have to protect the people before something terrible happens. And we've seen that in many areas, even throughout Missouri. That Missouri, I think, is one of the top states. I think Lauren said last time, one of the top states for deer strikes. It's something we really need to address right away. And if we don't have this plan for all 5 years, for all the way through it, plus the maintenance, and if there's leftover money, maintenance goes on even after the plan is done. So that money could be used for that, I would think.
Any other? I'll just follow up. I think what I'll do is just right now, I'm gonna wait to see what the discussion's like at council. So I'll just abstain from it until I can see how that conversation evolves. But that's just want to explain where I was coming from, because I think it's important, the deer issue. I mean, it's just we've got a lot of things on the plate. We've got to figure out how to address them all. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those, so we have a motion on the floor, right, Michelle? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone oppose or abstain? I'll just abstain. All right, that motion passes. So with that, then we'll proceed with the rest of the agenda here. So let me just find out what happened to my copy of the agenda now. I got the paper ones too.
For information.
All right, so I think we're done with the administration section of it. So we'll move on to Public Works for information. We already covered the first item, Old State Road, before, so we'll move into the second item, the black coated guardrail in Garden Valley subdivision.
Figured, how can I ask for a quick break primarily for Michelle's benefit? The meeting agenda is long and.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Some of us can get up and leave pretty easily. She
Yeah.
not necessarily, so.
So, all right, let's just take a quick recess here. That'll be good for everyone to stretch, get some coffee. And we'll resume.
Thank you.
still in the hospital, but should be coming out. Hopefully.
It's good news.
Dan, will you please mute the Dan, would you please mute the meeting while we're on break?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So we are going on for quite a bit here and it is getting late. Usually, I guess we get to this point, we'll ask if there is anything that could potentially be deferred, but you know, if you see something that's like could wait, and I think our next meeting isn't until, what is it, December 5th? So if that's an option, let's consider that. Not, let's try to be as efficient as possible. All right, so black coated guardrail in Garden Valley subdivision.
Yeah, Chair Gerton, I posted a memo rather late, so I don't know if y'all saw it.
No, didn't see it.
But I tried to give you a summary of kind of where we're at with that situation with Garden Valley. Basically, the guardrail, for the improvement plans for the subdivision is to be installed off the right of way. In most cases, not all, but in most cases, guardrail installed in subdivisions is typically located on private property. And for that reason, isn't responsibility of the city. And it seems to me that was the intent with Garden Valley. Long and short, it was painted black at one point. We believe it was done about 15 years ago. It's starting to flake off and is going to need attention and need to be repainted. The subdivision trustees are asking the city to paint it. We did have a quote of just under $12,000 to do the work. They're basically making the case it's too expensive for their subdivision to afford it. So since it appears to me that it's off the right of way, I'm reluctant to move forward with it. I guess what I was moving towards next was to do a survey, to really figure out where it's at. Is it the city's responsibility or not? And if it's both, then maybe we can take the survey to figure out how we allocate costs potentially. But I think the next step that I would like to do is to do the survey. I've got one quote to do that work. It's within the authority of the city administrator to approve the dollar amount. Thomas is agreeable, we could move forward in that regard or get another quote potentially. So with that, I'm certainly open to answering any questions that you may have on this issue.
Tracy.
Oh, I have a question. So I understand we're trying to determine where it is and the subdivision owners want to pay for it. We don't want to pay for it. But spending $4,500 on the survey to figure out where it is, if it lasted 15 years, the last time it was painted, would it be maybe better to talk to them, like even if we contributed $4,500 towards the painting of it instead of a survey? I don't know. I just feel like that's such a large chunk to spend on a survey if, well, just throwing that out.
Got any thoughts on that?
Well, at the end of the day, it's difficult to know where the responsibility falls. My position is absent other information to the contrary, it's the HOA's responsibility. Whether we could offer the money for an item that we believe to be off the right of way, I don't know. I have to talk to John Young.
Yeah, I think we maybe have opened a can of worms.
Oh, that's true.
Because I know our subdivision HOA asked about having the city paint the guardrails and we were told no. And I believe another subdivision was also told no, and they ended up painting their own guardrails.
It has come up in other subdivisions in similar manners, and that was the point I was trying to make. That's generally been the policy in the past.
I think we need to find out then where this guardrail sits before we can decide. I did hear from one of the trustees and they said that, they would be willing to accept future maintenance of the guardrail if the city were to, at this time, maintain it this one time, and then they would be willing to sign an agreement with the city to take it going forward. There's no written agreement to date right now over who is responsible for it. And the reason I took an interest in this, it's kind of curious that there's a guardrail and it's like, usually people aren't installing guardrails. It's usually city. So how did it come about? But the other thing too is that if that guardrail is not serving any purpose and it's not there for safety because the city would have installed it, they also said that they'd be open to just having it removed and just be done with it if the city would to do that as well. So I don't know, it's kind of odd why it's there in the first place because there isn't a drop off, like you said. It's just a bit of a field. It's weird how it is. So I guess we need to find out where.
Well, and certainly the survey would help to clarify that, but yeah, there might be a potential that some of it could literally be removed or maybe all.
Right. All right, so since that's for information, we'll keep moving forward here. Next is the proposed code changes for underground communication providers. So Joe Farmer's not here, but I did want to speak just a little bit on his behalf. He had reached out about having this put in here because some of you may have, I know I have, and I think Deborah might be as well. There's a lot of utility work going on. Paul's questions. And so is there a city to or require these utilities to be more proactive in their communications? So he would speak to it, but his phone died. So, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Chair Garitano, and this would certainly include that. But I think what we've seen is in my opinion, the department's opinion, there's a lot of issues that have concerned us with some of these projects. And we've seen AT&T over the last 2 years with their projects affecting literally hundreds of homes in Wildwood. Most of them have been Ward 8, like now they're moving over in your direction, Councilmember. So I expect it's going to continue, and we've seen a lot of damage in varying degrees. We've frankly seen this with our own Spectrum project as well, but our code is just, I think, out of date, and this needs to be updated. And I'm talking to John Young. He's started this process already, so I'd like to think we'll have something back from you as a committee, maybe at the next meeting to consider, and hopefully we can improve our code as it relates to special use permits for this type of work in the future, and add greater requirements for the communication of the project to communication of the damages that occur to the city. And better details relative to construction standards that are applicable that may not be stated currently in our code. And maybe have some greater teeth in terms of training that might be required on their part. So I think there's a lot of things can be addressed with this code change moving forward. So I think it's timely, and I think it'll help a lot of facets of communication being one of them for sure. I think hopefully we'll have that for you, if not the next meeting, shortly thereafter.
Thanks. Any questions or comments? All right, moving on then, oh, Teresa, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just had a comment. You know, fixing this so that it, we, you know, having a foolproof mechanism to avoid the inadvertent errors or mistakes that are made, I think is. We required them to give you that and say, because if they have that many problems occurring, hundreds of them over and over and over, you know, come from like the Japanese mindset, there is always some way to control it and some way to avoid the mistakes. And so do they not see that happening over and over and say, we're going to do something about it?
Well, you'd like to believe they do, and it's difficult for us to really know. But there are some different things that are being tried in the area, and I believe the current AT&T contractor we're working with is doing this, but having a third-party inspector on scene is one of the things that's started to occur elsewhere. So that in theory, there's an independent person who is following the work and reporting on it. So they're giving the city a report to say this was done, this damage was done or occurred. So right now, there's really, once we're out there with them 24/7 when they're working, we may not know what occurs. We may not know the damage that occurs. So there needs to be some way that we can get more reporting in that regard so that we know the problems that are existing and we can see that they're corrected. Right now, we may not even know it, frankly. But the goal is to get them on track so that they aren't making poor choices, performing poorly and taking risks that they shouldn't be taking.
Deborah?
Yeah, I mean, this is just my observation around what they're working in Ward 4 and, you know, farther on, out on Ward 5, is there seems to be different crews working. It doesn't seem to be all the same company. There's, you know, there's trucks with no logos on them. I mean, that might be part of the problem. I don't know that for sure, but that's what it appears.
If you, and you know, I'll keep this go too long, but that is part of the problem, Ms. McCutcheon, from what I've understood is these companies, a lot of times will have subcontractors working on their projects. And these folks can come in, sometimes they're out of town, don't really know how qualified they really are. You might have unmarked trucks, those kind of things. So it's can be difficult to know exactly who's working for whom and whether they're both qualified. So yeah, that is part of it.
And that is, and we've found that consistent, especially with the installation of fiber internet and just internet in general. These larger companies do typically hire larger construction companies that oversee the actual implementation, and those companies will subcontract out, but typically they are looking for, just like the city always is, the lowest bidder, the most reasonable bidder that has qualifications yet is offering the best deal. And then secondly, that being said, if there's a contractor that's, you know, maybe not up to snuff, they're not getting it done quick enough, they try to quickly move on to another contractor. They're trying to get these projects done as soon as possible. So if someone's not able to show up to work that day, they'll move on to the second option, which I think sometimes does equate to it. So we'll be looking into that as well. If that could be added to our special use permit, having some kind of notice of who's exactly working on those projects as well.
Thank you for that. Looking forward to seeing some action on that coming up soon. All right, we have several for action items. So the first is the review of the 2023 public roads and right-of-way and parks maintenance bids.
Thank you, Chair Garetano. Council members, each year we solicit for bids for our maintenance of our public roads, rights of way and parks. And we typically do that this time of year and bring the bids to your attention for review and approval. We opened bids this year on October 12th. I did provide the bids that were submitted to you. As I say every year, it's a lot of information. This year, we received bids from, I believe, 21 contractors interested in doing work for us. They provide bids on a variety of categories, and a lot of these contractors are specialty contractors, so they may only bid a handful of items over the overall bid. So keep that in mind. So this year, the Departments of Public Works and Parks are recommending accepting 19 contractor bids for varying allotments of work for next year. This would work for Public Works and for Parks, and I would point out that Mr. Vunich is with us tonight as well. If there's any specific questions related to the Parks Department's contractors. So this year we are recommending moving forward with contracts with those 19 contractors for 2024 based on the allocations I provided in Exhibit B. I would point out that of these 19 contractors, 17 are repeats. So we've worked with them previously last year. We have 2 new contractors. That would be Sweeten's Sealing Services and Busy Bee Paving, or Lyritz Busy Bee Paving. Sweeten's is going to be doing crack sealing for us, and then Lyritz would be doing asphalt patching. So we're going to try to work them into the mix and get them some experience working for us in 2024. And I wanted to call out to your attention that Glenn Gailey is kind of coming out of retirement a bit. He put a bid in. You may have seen him around town actually, because he's been doing some work still, but he officially put it.
I know. It's like
So,
son or something.
we anticipate with this approval that Glenn would be doing some work, probably a great deal of mowing for us for the parks and the trails. And finally, I would point out that Landcare did some work for us last year. They're a newer contractor for us. They put in some very low bids, and we'd like to give them a bigger chunk of work this year, primarily mowing for the right of way, and see how they perform. And if they do a good job, we're optimistic they will do a good job. Regardless, we will keep a close eye on them. And I'm sure they're very interested in performing for us. So those are the main changes for the year. It's with that, I'll wrap up. If there's any specific questions, I'm glad to entertain them. Otherwise, we are recommending going forward with those contracts with the 19 right-of-way maintenance contractors for 2024. Thank you.
Make a motion to move forward with that.
I'll move that we move forward with the department's recommendation for the trees.
Deborah making the motion. Is there a second? Second. All right, Teresa, any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstained? All right, motion passes. All right, next contractor bids for tree plant.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. This next recommendation is another one that's been an annual, typically fall related approval. As we've done in previous years, we worked with Davie Resource Group and to put together an RFP for tree planting. As we did last year, we're focused on planting trees or replanting trees. Essentially, we're focused on replanting dead trees in the town center. Most of those are trees that are in tree grates along the sidewalk areas in town center, but also in the neighborhood, in the right of way and the tree lawn area. And so it would be planting in both of those areas. As we did last year, we're recommending going forward with about 200 trees. Again, that was the number that we planted last year. And we've asked for prices for a variety of stock, but we are planning to plant with the smaller number 15 container stock. However, we do have prices for larger materials. We've had cases and expect that we may have a few subdivisions that want to work with us, potentially plant larger trees back. And what we've been doing in the past is we have allowed that And based on the bids that we've got, they just have to make up the difference in cost. So we've got that set up so we can do that again this year, but otherwise we are planning to move forward with about 200 trees. Number 15 container size trees as well. So we got, in response to the RFP, we did get 2 respondents. One was STL Tree Pros, the other was Omni Tree Service. And of course, Omni does a great deal of work for us right now as a right-of-way maintenance contractor, primarily tree removals, tree trimming, that kind of thing. St. Louis Tree Pros, their bid was a lot higher, frankly, and significantly higher, so it really wasn't something we considered. Omni's prices are competitive. They're actually a little bit lower than last year. So based on that, the recommendation is to move forward with a city contractor agreement with Omni Tree Service to plant trees for winter into spring of 24. I can find that number in front of me. Basically, the number that I have is $78,000. That's basically 200 trees for the price that they bid for the number 15 container stock. So the contract will be for the not to exceed amount of $78,000. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them.
Any questions or motion? For the department's recommendation? Tracy,
I move that we accept the department's recommendation to use Omni trees.
okay, second. One
A
second.
second, but I have a question, Chair.
All right, second with a question by Laura.
I know that both spring and fall are obviously the best times to plant, but fall is usually the best. Is there just a particular reason why we're on a just scheduling for spring typically? Is it because we're not done with removal and grinding in the fall? And then we miss the planting season? I'm just thinking we've had trouble, right, with, we're trying to educate residents to water their trees in. We've talked about leaving flyers so that the trees have a higher success rate. But what would help even more is if they were able to drop their leaves and spend their time growing roots throughout the winter, rather than just going immediately into a summer season from spring.
Right, and so I don't disagree with the council member. We would prefer to probably have a bigger window to plant in the fall. I think what I've found is it's very difficult to find people that are available to plant in the fall unless you get your bids out way in advance. And so I think the reality is I think we need to get our bid out probably in the spring, much earlier to get bids, because once it gets into summertime, they get busy and they just don't have the capacity to get it done. So maybe I would just to piggyback on that. So the bid that we got from Omni, we asked for pricing for this year and then the next 2 years. So if we select Omni, we actually do have that capability. They have the pricing so that we could consider, like, we could move forward with fall tree planting with Omni next fall at the prices they've given us. So that is the one benefit with the RFP that we put out. We allowed that to occur with this RFP. But yes, I would agree. We prefer, given everything we know, to plant in the fall if we can. But in this case, we just, quite frankly, with Trash-mageddon, as we've called it, we just didn't have enough time to get it all done. I would also say too, we have included in the RFP the requirement that they put tree diapers on the trees in the residential neighborhoods. So this is a newer technology that we've not used, but apparently these tree diapers, you place them around the tree and you saturate them with water, and then they slowly infiltrate the water and the moisture into the ground to keep the tree wet, or to water the tree continuously. So that's something we're going to try this year to get better the watering of the trees.
You have to refill the tree diapers.
Yes, sir. You have to, as I understand it, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know more about this, but what we understand is you have to rewater the diaper. So I don't know exactly how long they stay saturated, but they will dry out, and then you have to go through and rewater them so they fill back up.
So will that be part of the plan, or like truck going around checking them on, or is that dependent on the residents to do?
We are anticipating that we will probably have a contractor do that watering, yes.
Can I say something about those? So what makes those different than like the gator bags? Like gator bags are basically like a bag that holds water, and these instead have this component that basically soaks up the water.
It's essentially what's in a diaper.
It's essentially
That's what
like
they do.
what's in a diaper, so it's like a slow filtration.
Oh,
And then, so it'll hold the water, it'll prevent the water from just evaporating.
And I believe it goes under the mulch, so you don't really know that it's there.
yeah, I see a picture. It's like a bag. It's like a donut.
Yeah.
It looks like around the and I'm thinking of the other one, which is the
Gator bag.
gator bag. So the. okay.
Yep.
All right, you need a motion for approval of the department's recommendation for the pre,
Yes, Chair, if you can see to it, we'd like to get a approval of the recommendation to move forward with the agreement with Omnitree for $78,000 for the tree planting project.
I already made that motion.
do we have that?
Yeah.
Ian made the motion. You didn't second it, so we just have to vote.
What's that? We're good. We just have to vote. Okay, that's good. All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the city's recommendation for tree planting, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstain? All right, motion passes. All right, we're getting there. Next is the proposed city consultant agreement for final design of Main Street.
Chair, Town Council members, I think you're aware we are working on plans to design the extension of Main Street from basically City Hall over to Atherton Road. Last year about this time, we approved a contract with Civil Design Incorporated, an engineering firm, to complete the preliminary design of the project. And that work has been ongoing. And I try to provide a copy of the current plan with my memorandum to you tonight. So the preliminary plan process has been completed. At this point, we would like to move into final design. Approval from Civil Design Incorporated to complete the final design of the project, which we provided to you. So the recommendation tonight is to enter into a city consultant agreement with Civil Design Incorporated to complete the final design. The cost for that contract would be $120,000. If there's any specific questions that you'd like to ask, I'll be glad to entertain them at this time.
Deborah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of confused by the fact this is still a private street. And there's maybe one or two developments along that street coming forward. So how do you justify the city paying for upgrades to a private street?
Well, the project is an important project that has been part of our planning for some time now, and Joe Bunich, I think, might still be with us. So I'm sure Joe would be more than happy to talk relative to the importance of the Main Street extension in the town center plan. Obviously, we've built the segment from Atherton to 109 with a roundabout with the goal of connecting it all the way through the Taylor Road. There has been, as you referenced, and Joe would be more than happy to talk about it, development projects proposed that could conceivably contribute. And I think depending on where it goes, that's still a possibility. But I think it's important for us to take some initiative here and lead this effort so that we can decide what we want as a city to see with that project. And we do have that opportunity by taking the lead with this design, is to set the parameters by which we want Main Street to be designed and constructed in the future. So I think we would have the advantage of steering the boat essentially by doing this. And again, it's an important project for town center. It's an important project for the village green, obviously, and that project is moving forward as well.
I understand it's the importance of it and the city's desire to have the improvements for many, many years, but you know, in reality, it's still a private street. It's not a public street. So we're gonna be using public funds for a private street improvement. So that's my concern.
Well, it is a private street now, and part of the process with the project would be to acquire the rights and to make the street a public street. And so we would be negotiating with those property owners that have those rights to acquire them, to acquire the right of way and or easements that we need to build a roadway to make it a public roadway.
But it sounds like we're putting the cart before the horse.
Well, I think with the, and I might ask Joe to step in here a little bit, but with the development projects that were planned, we anticipated, because we own the Village Green and then there was still a parcel over across the street that wasn't necessarily part of those projects, that we would have to be involved in the completion of the project in some manner. It just wasn't going to get done without the city's lead, either on the shoulders of one developer, two developers. It really needed someone to row that boat, to steer that boat, to get it done. Now, the developers would still be there potentially if they develop to contribute financially to the construction of it. And Joe would probably better talk about that aspect of it than I would. His hand up as well.
Hey, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McCutcheon, first and foremost, I would say this contract would benefit Village Green. We own 2/3 of the 13 or 2 of the 13 shares relative to Crestview Drive, since we own 2 lots for Village Green. So I don't feel like we're necessarily spending all of the money on a private endeavor. We have a public interest here. Secondly, I think Mr. Lee and the Economic Development Committee could tell you that this is an economic driver for our town center. And we talk a lot about wanting to do things to improve the business environment in town center, and I think this would be one. And then finally, the complication with McBride Homes project Crestview is primarily based on Main Street. And Rick and I talked this morning, and I think this would be akin to making that project shovel ready, meaning we have the design, the next developer doesn't have to wait and go through many, many discussions to get to this point. Thank you.
Yes, and Chair, if you don't mind, if I jump in here just real quick and just to speak on the aspect of the economic development piece and just the general piece. We've been trying to tie the town center together and drive additional traffic through our town center, at least the center of the town center. And by doing that, putting the Village Green in, but also having the road cut through Main Street, quite literally. This has been a part of our plans for a good amount of time, and we do own those lots that are going to be turned into the Village Green, which are important. But you know, speaking with businesses across the entire city, they've all spoken in favor of this. And you know, at the end of the day, too, backing what Mr. Vunich said, if we don't kind of lead this effort, it'll be very hard for another developer to come in and see how they can actually put in a development without having this guidance. I mean, the McBride, I mean, that really was a big piece that killed this project, killed their project, was how were they going to work in the Main Street component? And at least by having the design element ready, that gives whoever the developers are that are going to add additional density to our town center, which was the overall goal of our master plan, that is going to be crucial to driving additional economic development and keeping local businesses here open. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that have come to me and, you know, specifically stated that they cannot wait to see this happen. And if you think about it, you know, I know the Village Green will come first, but it is going to be kind of off to the side. We're going to have ingress and egress to it, but end of the day, it does need a supporting road to it, and hopefully some additional housing that is going to go towards it as well, to really kind of add some life to the town center and get some additional bodies walking around. Thank you.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn for Councilmember McCutcheon, but I think she basically has the same question that I do, which is not needing an explanation of how this could be beneficial, but what is the legal mechanism to make this work? I say that because of our time on Watershed Erosion Task Force, where we were, you know, consistently voicing the opinion of the city attorney, which was that we're not going to spend money on private property. we just spent money to do plans for retention basins. The difference in my understanding in that, for example, is that we're asking for changes that go beyond any sort of legal requirement that the city provides or MSD provides, and that's for a design element. So I think, you know, at least my question and probably hers is just how does this actually work legally? Is it because we own land on that street and we're making an investment on behalf of our own investment essentially?
Yes, that is my understanding. And I think the other piece is that we would, and that's what was part of the deal with McBride and also with the other projects across that area, was that they would be dedicating the land across the easements that we would need to build the street. So it would, there's a collective action issue here where everyone that has a stake in the property fronting Main Street will have to contribute in. But when it comes to the design element, we do have stake on this street, and it does serve the public interest in that case. So that's where we kind of get across that hurdle. But Rick, were you about to say something?
Well, I was just gonna emphasize that essentially we are going to take a private street and make it a public street by acquiring those private rights as we would on any other project where we might need an easement or new right of way. We are going to have to make offers to owners and compensate them potentially to acquire those rights and make it a public roadway.
And just help me understand, this needs to occur before that.
Before we construct it, yes.
The design part though, is what I'm saying.
Putting the plans together, the actual right-of-way acquisition effort would essentially be a separate approval. This would be making the plans, the final design improvement plans. It would quantify the amount of right-of-way that we would need to acquire, or easement rights that we would need to acquire. But then we would need to take that step, as we just did tonight, with potentially hiring a consultant to actually acquire those rights for us. And then make ultimately with the goal of making the street a public roadway.
Okay.
Joe?
Rick did a wonderful job and responded how I would, so thank you.
All right, I think we had a lot of discussion on that one there. Is there anyone that'd like to make the motion for the proposed city consultant agreement for the final design of Main Street? Lauren, is that your hand up to make a motion?
I just forgot to put it down.
Okay, I'll make the motion. Tracy, looks like you second. All right, all those in favor of the motion, you say aye.
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 Opposed or abstain?
Opposed.
Abstain.
One abstain. All right, still passes. So we're gonna move on to the next, which is the proposed city consultant agreement for design of the Route 100 J-turn project.
Council members, Chair Garitano, I appreciate your attention tonight to all these approvals. We are trying to get a few things wrapped up by the end of the year because they were in the budget. So that's why we're throwing a lot at you tonight. So as you know, we have been working on a improvement project on Route 100 for the J-turns to be constructed at Pond Road and at St. Albans Road. So we have recently completed a conceptual engineering study and report with the firm GBA. At this point, that effort has been completed, and we would like to move forward with the design of the improvement project. We would state that earlier or last fall, we did request for qualifications from engineering firms interested in doing the project. And we did receive 3 letters of interest, and after evaluating those letters of interest, we did determine that we felt GBA was the most qualified and the best firm to move forward. So tonight we are recommending a city consultant agreement with GBA to complete the engineering design of the J-turn improvement project on Route 100. And the amount of that contract would not exceed the amount of $385,000. So with that recommendation, certainly be available for any questions that you may have.
Teresa?
Well, I'll make a motion that we move forward with the recommendation, but I just wanted to point out that in a write-up, it seems to say the highway T and pond, but on the drawings, it does show that the crossovers at T and pond are eliminated. The crossover at Wild Horse Creek Road is changed to be a turnaround. And the other two J turns will be at the west of Pond Road and south of Highway T. So there'd be 3 turnarounds and close off of the 2 crossovers.
Yeah, just for clarity, I did include the exhibits, I believe, with the memorandum. So those are the recommendations from the report that we have at this point. For design.
My motion.
All right, second. Right by Rob. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? That motion passes. All right, moving on. We already discussed number 5. Number 6, this is the proposed modification to the intersection of Turnberry Place and Strecker Road for a gate and Councilmember Edens, do you want to postpone this?
I do, yes. Chair Garitano, I was expecting the trustees to be participating in this meeting and to share an outcome of kind of a temperature take they were going to take of their residents from their October HOA meeting. They're not here tonight, so I'd like to have this discussion. So postpone until the next meeting, please.
So motion to postpone to the next meeting made by Councilmember Edens. Is there a second on the motion to postpone this topic of the gate? All right, made by Teresa. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Motion passes. All right, we already covered the private dedication of alleys. So that leads us to, I think we covered it all. All right, good job. Next meeting, December 5th, as a reminder, we had 2 meetings for the month of October. Therefore, we meet again in December. So anything on the miscellaneous? No, all right, and motion to adjourn.
Sorry.
Oh, you have miscellaneous?
Yes, I do. I have one requested that the accessibility is on
December agenda. All right, a request that we put the other for information or
for information. It's
for information in the December agenda. So motion to adjourn. Made by Tracy. And seconded by Deborah. This is a non-debatable motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I have a question, Mr. Brown.
Meeting adjourned.
I understand this is not about the agenda. It's about the text messages and emails we've been getting. Do we have a date for a meeting for this week?
What meeting are you talking about?
That's just, we can talk afterwards.
Okay.
Look at maybe Monday.
I think we are. Yes, we're done. Meeting adjourned.